Gruesome Magazine.
My name is Jeff Mohr, and this is Gruesome Magazine, where we review the very latest in theatrical release, streaming, and video-on-demand horror movies. Each week, Doc Rotten, Crystal Cleveland, Dave Dreher, Christopher G. Mohr, and I look at various spooky, scary, and gory genre offerings. With me this week, this episode, today, is Crystal Cleveland, the living dead girl. How you doing, Crystal?
Oh, you know what? I'm super bad at this. Okay, I'm really bad at doing intros and stuff like that.
I see Freddy behind you.
Yeah. Okay, but wait, see, there we go.
There we go.
That's what I should have done. I should have been like, and then but they are stainless steel. They're really sharp, so I gotta
be careful. Don't
great.
forget and scratch your eye or something.
You've been having any good dreams lately? any good dreams lately?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that Freddy ASMR?
Yeah, that's. I'm like.
Nightmare on ASMR Street.
Also with me is Christopher G. Mohr, award-winning director and all-around film guy. How you doing, Christopher?
I'm doing fine.
He's been hiding.
Doing well. I was prepared.
Yeah, you didn't have to rush and get it. Well, you know what? You always thinking ahead. That's why you're the director.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Guess what movie we're doing? So we're here on the Gruesome Magazine podcast. We'll give our few details about the movie, our first impressions. That'll be spoiler free. Mm-hmm. Then we'll get into spoilers, although I'm not sure this is a spoiler type movie. Yeah. And at the end, we'll talk about our favorite scene, or maybe in this case, our favorite tidbit, something we learned, and give it a rating from 1 to 5.
Yay.
All right. So our movie today is Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares, the Robert Englund story. This will be available streaming on Screambox beginning June 6th, 2023, and on Blu-ray July 25th, 2023. This is basically the Robert Englund biography. It says the Robert Englund story. He's a classically trained actor and director. Robert Englund has become one of the most revolutionary horror icons of our generation. Throughout his career, Englund starred in many well-known movies, but shot to superstardom with his portrayal of supernatural serial killer Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. This movie is co-directed by Gary Smart and Christopher Griffiths. And instead of a cast, we'll talk about some of the interviews. This intimate portrait captures the man behind the glove and features interviews with Englund, his wife Nancy, and such genre favorites as Tony Todd, Kane Hodder, Lance Henriksen, Bill Moseley, Eli Roth, Lynn Shay, Heather Langenkamp, Mick Garris, Andrew Divoff, William Catt, Jeffrey Reddick, Corey Taylor, and more. There's a lot more, actually. Mm-hmm. So let's get the show on the road, and I think we'll go with Crystal first.
Okay. Yay.
So what did you think about this film, Crystal?
I love this. I love Robert Englund. I mean, I've only had the pleasure of meeting him once, and that was like 14 years ago when it was so easy to meet him because no one cared about horror. The Texas Frightmare, there was no line. I was just able to go up. No big deal. A couple years ago, I tried it again, and I literally, in 3 days at Texas Frightmare, could not get to him. So crazy how much horror and Robert Englund has exploded. This is an awesome documentary. The quality is excellent. The stories are so cute. There's a lot I didn't know in this. I love that Robert is talking a lot, and I love that they had his wife. William Catt is hilarious. I had no idea. Like I've told theater stories before, and I guess I don't know if people ever believe me because I'm like, look, you lose a lot of your inhibitions in theater because even in high school, like you go to the side and you just change and I like and what he was talking, I was like, see, that is how it is. It really, and I didn't realize that people maybe were paying attention more than you think, but you know,
Catching side
yeah.
glances as he described.
Yeah. You know, you might say that. You get so busy, it's so quick. It's hard to like really take the time. You know, I've always been a big Robert Englund fan, and I even more than Freddy, I love that they talked about the Phantom of the Opera. I loved it. I loved the movie, but you know, I'm a horror lover and a Phantom lover, so it hit all the notes for me. I mean, the quality of this was really good. I mean, I think it's just the stories, though. I don't want to give them all away because really, I do think we should kind of stay away from like explaining the stories because I think that's really all this movie is really about. But there were some stories here that kind of, you know, Star Wars and stuff made my jaw drop. That I was like, oh, that is really interesting. I think that's cool. Yeah, it was wonderful, shot well. It felt quick, but there was a lot of good information. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna rate this, you know, a little differently than a traditional horror movie because it's a documentary and but I think this is a must watch for any Fred head, any Freddy lover, and even if you just like Robert, I think so too. So I mean, it just made me like him even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Christopher G. Mohr. What were your first impressions of Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares?
Well, anyone that knows me knows I'm a huge Nightmare on Elm Street fan. When I was a teenager, I had a corner of my room dedicated to Freddy merchandise. You know, this is actually my Freddy sweater I used to wear when I dressed up as Freddy in a haunted house that my church did. Which I don't think they do those anymore. But yeah, our youth group did a whole. I mean, it was
that's awesome. Actually,
I think they stopped it when some guy set off some kind of explosive thing and burn off part of his eyebrows. But anyway, that's enough about that. But anyway, yeah, I grew up loving Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a huge influence on me. I mean, my film Back of Creep, which Crystal was a part of, is hugely influenced because I wanted to create my own character. And so I've always been a big fan of Robert Englund. I loved the V series that came on. I was old enough to watch it when it first came on television. And when he was like the sort of like the goofy character on that series. And then Nightmare on Elm Street came out, and I just loved it because it was like, contrary to other stories, it was about a killer that can get you at your most vulnerable point when you're sleeping, and can tap into your worst fears. And so I love that. But he was also one of those killers because most of your killers don't really talk, you know, unless it's like Pinhead. But most of them, like, you know, Jason Voorhees or any of those, don't really talk. And so, but yeah, he did such a great job embodying that character. And I'd heard a lot of the different stories over the years. You know, I have all the movies. I've watched a lot of documentaries, and so I've heard the Star Wars story before, but there's a lot of stuff I didn't know, and I think I like this because it definitely delved more into like his background, how he grew up, his history acting, other movies he's been in, you know, and some of the experiences with that, and I got to know a little bit more, and I know there's almost elements that made him feel like he's the Forrest Gump of the horror, you know, genre, because there's a story involving Halloween that I didn't know. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and I think even though he's gotten to do a lot, and there's a lot of movies now, it makes me want to go and check out a lot of these movies he did overseas because there's like a whole period they talk about like some of the movies he did, because I don't think I've seen a lot of those ones. I mean, I've seen Phantom of the Opera and some of the other ones he's done, but not so much some of these other things. And so yeah, and I think it's, you know, I didn't really know anything about his wife, how they met. And so that was a very interesting story. I didn't know they had these relationships with people like William Catt from Greatest American Hero or House, you know, or Lance Hendrickson. You know, I didn't know that he had all these kind of relationships, you know. So yeah, just learning all those different things, more information that I hadn't known, because I, being a Fred head, which if you see the upcoming documentary that I have a small part in, as a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, you think you know everything about an actor, and I learned a lot of stuff I didn't know. So I love that it kind of delved in there. And I think some documentaries, they're kind of like, they're slapped together. They just get interviews with people that know them. And some of those can be a little bit, cut up in ways that doesn't really flow really well. I feel like this documentary did a great job of, how it would go to different parts of his filmography or his life. And they do like either little animated things or they do visual effects type things like did with the TV for V, things like that. I think that made it much more interesting that I like when you're doing a documentary.
Cartoons.
Yeah, like the cartoons and stuff, because there's like an animated thing where they talk about like when people are trying to rush him when he's on set or whatever. So you have all these things that make it a more entertaining documentary because it's not just a bunch of talking heads over and over and over. They kind of meld it in these, and they have these little sections of it. And so, yeah, I think it's a really interesting and fun documentary that kind of celebrates him and his life and that he's more than just that character. Although they did find it very funny. There's like one part where they kind of like give shade to that remake without talking much about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a really fun documentary, and I think if you're a horror lover, and now if you're a lover of Robert Englund, you should check it out because I think it's a really interesting, insightful, and a beautiful sort of homage to this actor who really he's Shakespearean trained. He has all these skills, and it's kind of sad that in some ways he hasn't been able to branch out, but at the same time, he's done a great job with all the stuff he's been given over the years. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful doc. I think everybody needs to see it at some point.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I don't know near as much about Robert Englund as you guys do at the start of it, but this documentary is 2 hours and 14 minutes long.
Oh, it didn't feel that long.
Yeah, I know. I literally, I'm like going, God, I wish there was more. It was so interesting. There's literally sections of him just telling stories, and then talking to some of the people he talks about, and they're reinforcing the story or talking about the relationships with him. And what really comes across is, for the most part, everybody's got their good and bad days, but he is a really nice guy and cares about other people on the set and helping out other actors and things. So anyway, I learned a ton of stuff that I didn't know before, even though we've done we reviewed the Tobe Hooper alligator movie, Eaten Alive. We reviewed that on 70s, and that has him in there, and he's got an iconic line in there that apparently people still come up to him and say that's sort of not safe for public, but they say it anyway, I guess.
Yes. I had no idea it came from that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that was attached to that.
He's basically a hillbilly, and he's got some girl up in this shack.
Kill Bill.
He's great. He's great. So anyway, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I did most of those stories. I hadn't heard the Star Wars story. I hadn't heard the Carrie story. I didn't know about the Halloween. I didn't know. The other thing that comes across that's really kind of cool is I've heard a lot of stories about New York actors, that are, that end up being famous actors that kind of grew up together in maybe the 70s or the 60s and 70s into acting and shared apartments and all this other stuff. Well, the same thing was going on in California in the 70s, and you find out who those people were, and they're showing up in their own movies and maybe just helping out and trading scripts and doing all kinds of stuff. So I found that really interesting. And we see some of that now, right? I mean, with some of the indie movies that we do, there's a group of people that kind of hang out or are friends that tend to show up in each other's movies in different functions and things. I think that's interesting. I like that. So anyway, and I learned I learned about some movies that I'm going to want to go see that back in the 70s that are not necessarily the horror movies. That he did a couple with Jan Michael Vincent and Henry Fonda. And anyway, I think that's all I got. But this is a must watch. I think everybody ought to check this out, and it'll be available on Screambox. So I don't know about you guys, but I don't know what the subscription is now. But like last fall, I think I signed up for a year of Screambox for like $40. It was a special deal. I don't know what it's going to be when it renews, but I couldn't pass it up for $40, and they've really stepped up.
Yeah, I was about to say they've really
their
started adding
content
some
is
really good
is
stuff.
really elevated from when they first started. So anyway, so I don't know what do we want to talk about? You want to?
I can't believe I forgot about those cartoons. I mean, just those cartoons alone, where they're like an animated Robert doing whatever he was talking about. I was like, that is so cute.
Well, he's got such a legacy. He shows up in so many different shows, like episodes of The Simpsons and episodes. There's just everything. The Goldbergs. He's in,
because
there's just all kinds of stuff because it's such an icon.
Yeah, anyone who grew up watching Nightmare on Elm Street is, I mean, they have to be a fan of Robert Englund.
The first one of those.
He's a legend.
The original Nightmare on Elm Street scared the crap out of me, and I was like 30 when I saw it. I mean, I'm not kidding you. There was all kinds of stuff in there that were like dream stuff, like. So anyway.
Well, in high school, my license plate was NITMARE. So it's like, I grew up loving that. But I think I will say, like, I don't know if you guys saw The Fabelmans, Spielberg's newest film, but
I haven't yet.
But the when they tell him growing up, Robert Englund growing up, and how he found his calling with acting and stuff, I found that kind of similar to Spielberg, his film about the Fabelmans as well. How like his father wanted him to do one thing and he went off and did this other thing, that kind of thing. But I did like that where they showed like the pictures of him like dressed as Peter Pan when, when he went off to like some kind of acting camp or something.
Well, I think he. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was finished. Go ahead.
No, well, Robert Englund talks about playing Pinocchio when he was like 14 or being in Pinocchio. I think he was Pinocchio, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
I think
he
that
talks
was the
about
first one, wasn't it? I think that was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like 14, and he was he loved doing in subsequent showings of the film of. I mean, what it sounded like to me was him that he sort of hammed it up with different shtick every so often, and when he got laughs, that's what sold him.
Well, that and I did like the aspect of, and I knew this growing up too, is like that when it came to the other slot, when he talked about like I think college or whatever, you go to the regular parties and there was all these guys compared to women, but you go to like the acting parties. Or acting organization is all these women, and how like when he was younger, when they had all these girls,
and only a few guys and a large percentage of the guys
harem
were gay.
Yeah.
When he was like, talking about these women, like with their
when they had that,
boobs
and
in
that's
his
when they had
face.
the animated thing where they're like, "Hey, let's do your hair." And he's like, "I like this," and I was like,
awesome.
I can totally understand that. You do have that kind of draw because it's like it's always that kind of thing because when you're growing up, I think they always make. I guess they always have shows where like the guy goes to the drama team because there's more girls than guys. So it is kind of funny how part of it was just the acting bug and the other part was just like, ooh, girls. But yeah, I think learning those kind of aspects, because I think most people just see from when he became either like V or Nightmare on Elm Street, and they just know that perspective of his life, but they don't see the expanded perspective of him growing up or even stuff after that fact, when it came to, because I mean there's a few of those films. I think was it Dance Macabre, I think one of the name was like some other Russian one, which I really want to see a lot of these different things that show off his different acting perspectives. But also I do like that they show him as being this sort of caring human being, because there's a wonderful story. I don't know if you knew, Heather Langenkamp, she lost her son a few years back, and there's like a story where she talked about how he called her and stuff, and it's like, that's just a very sweet thing, that because I think sometimes you have some actors that don't really, once they get some kind of level of stardom, they sort of like don't really care. They kind of lose their humanity, and you see that he still has his humanity and still a wonderful human being. And like, the first time I met him was actually at Dragon Con many years ago. And that was when there was nobody coming up to his table.
Yeah,
and we chatted
so
with him and had such a great conversation. And then a few years later, I think it was Mad Monster Party. I had my picture taken with them. But then it's like all these lines and stuff. But it's kind of weird how like for a while there, you had that kind of form of stardom where everybody was like, I was one of those people that called that 900 number. My parents got all my kids because I spent money, buy all these different things, and all of a sudden it kind of dropped off, But then it's like now he's kind of like how time kind of makes everybody appreciate things a whole lot more and appreciate what he brings to that character.
Yeah,
I agree.
like they did say, and he's really the only person that could. But they also, his wife also mentioned that you want to be able to see someone else take over the mantle and do a good job. And you do, because it'll keep the character alive. But those are some big shoes to fill. Like,
well, I have a pitch. Eli said, I have a pitch of how we can make a new one if you want to.
There you go.
Which would incorporate him in some way. But it's, I think there's ability, even if they go like a different direction, do something different, sort of how like they did like the recent Hellraiser remake, do something a little bit different, even if it's not something that's kind of like Freddy Krueger or something that's connected to Freddy Krueger. But he's one of those things to where like, when they try to do the reboot, that comparison was just like, if you try to go a certain way, it just doesn't work, But then it's like you have Jason Voorhees or other things, you can always replace them because they don't talk, so you don't really have to worry about it, But anytime you're trying to replace that kind of original person, it's very hard to do sometimes, Even that was it one of those Hellraiser remakes where they made the Great Value one where the guy just didn't like just right. But Robert,
oh my gosh,
but
it was so bad.
But Robert Englund, I think he's
now the newer one was better.
He brings such a bravado to the character, and he just brings such a personality that it's kind of hard to top that. And I think that's why he's created one of the greatest villains that's ever existed in cinema.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, he has, and he morphed it, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
He wasn't anywhere near as campy in the first one. Some, but not as much as it turned into. So.
But what's amazing is he still got funny and he got campy, but it still was scary. It still like had that, and so that's why it's so good. That's why I think I just loved Freddy. God, I loved, but I also loved Pinhead. I'm not gonna lie, I had a big thing for Pinhead too. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't what kind of effed up kid was I, but. Man, when he got funny, it's like it's just that shouldn't have worked, but it worked so well. He's fabulous. And well, I mean, let's be real, he's very attractive without the makeup. You know what I mean? It's like he's a good looking
He's very
dude.
confident, and he's
okay, but what's so funny? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say is what you could see how much he and his wife cared for him every time they talked about each other. It was
I know, isn't that sweet?
Very amazing, yeah.
So what's funny is he does seem very. When I met him, though, he was so quiet and like it almost felt painfully shy. Like he was just like very. I think that now that he's got this whole revival, maybe it's fueled him. Maybe it's been really good, and like
I think it's different when your
personality.
When you're playing a part too, I mean. It probably doesn't seem like it, but I'm actually an introvert. But when I used to do training with a dozen people at a time, and I'd have to like take a deep breath and go, okay, now I'm on. I wasn't like I was acting, but I had to pump up the energy, and that kind of stuff really sapped me. And so I think maybe he had something like that when he's got a part to play or when he's got an idea. And some of the stuff he talked about auditioning was pretty funny and interesting as well. I saw V2, and I never, I know that was after the first Nightmare, but for some reason I didn't pick up on it being the same guy. I don't know why.
Because he was so sweet.
Yeah.
So I haven't ever seen. I've only seen a little bit of it. It's got to be streaming somewhere. I'm gonna have to Google it because I want to watch it. But like, I do remember him only because he was so sweet and cute. He was the good alien. He was the good reptile or whatever. So that's actually almost one of the only things I remember from the whole. I think he got someone pregnant though, didn't he? Didn't he actually get someone pregnant? Am I crazy?
That
feel
sounds
like
right.
he
Like
did.
they had the first hybrid.
Yeah,
There
or
was a
something.
hybrid that they brought into like they had a sequel series after that. But yeah, all I remember is them eating full rats.
Oh yes.
Straws would open up and they'd stick a rat in their mouth.
I
Or the
definitely
ripping
have
of
to
the
catch
skin.
that back
But
up
yeah,
on that again.
But yeah, there's a and the funny thing is, like, I don't know if you guys listened to the Tarantino podcast, but they'd actually reviewed that one movie that they mentioned in the documentary where he plays an albino.
Yes.
They reviewed that movie. For
Oh,
one of
without
their
the yeah,
episodes.
yeah.
Which I kind of want to see if I can find that. But yeah, I think if anything, it just kind of realizes that our view of his filmography is very narrow. We probably haven't ventured outside of the horror genre as much. And it'd be kind of, or at least some of the films that he's done. I mean, of course, there was a while there where you have those movies go straight to video or close to it.
Sure.
What was it? What's the one with the not the Shredder, but what was the one? The
Mangler.
The Mangler, yeah.
The Mangler, yes. Okay, yeah.
Or these things where he get to play like these, big wacky characters But I did also like some of the stuff where I think the one movie he did with Lynn Shay and stuff where he was like, you're talking about what he brought to the character and
that was.
And then
well, I
she
think
kills
we
him.
reviewed that. Midnight Man was
love
one
her.
that we reviewed that I think had both of them in it.
Oh really? Yeah. Well, I guess they've acted in a few different ones. 'Cause I think she has like a small bit, and I think in Nightmare, one of the Nightmare films. But yeah, I think as a filmmaker, it's like, oh man, I would love to be able to work with him if I could just give him some kind of part that he could have a lot of fun with,
Well, he has something coming up too.
Well, I'm sure
But
money-wise.
you never know. He did zombie strippers or something. I'll do it.
Oh wow, man! If I do Knob Goblins the feature, I'm gonna have to call him up.
It's got to be good. I mean, it's called, wasn't it Zombie Strip? Yeah, something like that. I thought that's hilarious. She's like, I'll do it. Okay, I'm in. What?
Well, that is funny that of all the titles, that would be the one that you would.
Because it's
be
fun. Like I think what's smart about him is I think he takes everything in stride. He is appreciative of his success. When I think a lot of people who are so pigeonholed into something, they're like, they get angry, but he appreciates it, and I'm glad he relishes it because it's amazing,
Well, I think a few years ago I did get to see him. I think it was at DragonCon actually. I went to one of his panels, and I think the thing is like, he works in the horror genre. He does all these films that maybe sometimes people might like, oh, that's crap or this or that. But he treats each one of them like it's Shakespeare.
I love it
because I remember he was talking about some indie film he worked on. Like, oh, we went to the Shantae, or we went to this he just talks all like flowery with his experiences with each film he works on, and a lot of actors don't like that. Like, I just showed up on set. But he actually has a passion for what he does, even if it's some kind of small, crazy part or some bigger part, or if it's Freddy Krueger. And I think that's probably why he's still around and doing stuff, is because, he has that appreciation for the stuff that he makes.
Right.
I mean, I think he loves it. And I think, like, one of my acting coaches told me, when you stop loving it, it's time to stop acting. So I think there's something to that. It should be fun. You should enjoy it. You should have fun with it. And you do, Robert.
Well, let's wrap
like
this
he's
up
ever
here.
going to see this.
He might.
But let's do, what do you want to do? Like I don't know, favorite story or favorite piece of information.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. We can give it a score.
And,
I mean, I'm going to give it.
And your rating from 1 to 5. So
1 to 5.
Once again, Crystal was first. Everything I own that's electronic doesn't seem to work anymore. Okay.
Uh, wait. So what's funny is I wrote down these stories that were my favorites, and I wrote down the second one, and I'm like, I don't know what it is, but it had to be good because it has Burt Reynolds and it says Hustle. And I'm like, I know that was good. I just can't remember. I barely remember Burt Reynolds. But it's got to be the Harem Girls. And I know that's one of the first stories he told. But when he talked about being 11 years old and having boobs and bellies in his face and like being like, this is it. This is the life for me. I think that's so precious. It's so cute. Like, of course he enjoyed the laughs. And like you said, every arrow I just love his personality. And I think that's like probably the epitome of his personality. Like, living for the crowd and the love. And I get that. And then also, I quit theater too because of politics. So I relate a lot to him. And I'm going to give it, as a documentary, I mean, it's like a 5 for me. I'm sorry. It's like, I mean, I know that's different than I would rate a normal movie, but I enjoyed every second of this, and I didn't realize it was that long. So the fact that I could have watched more means that it was excellent.
All right.
Yep.
A 5. I like that.
Yeah.
Christopher, how about you?
I think you were thinking about the Burt Reynolds' toupee being blown up.
That was it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank
because he
you.
was shooting a gun.
Yes.
He was shooting a gun,
Wow.
and he didn't realize even back then he was wearing a toupee.
That was
And
thank you.
And he told him, I guess he gave him some advice or whatever. This is a no-brainer for me. This gets a 5 out of 5 blades. And I think it's a really, it's long. This kind of documentary has been needed to be made for a while now, I think. And I think it's a really beautiful portrait of an actor who he's known for this one thing, but he's more than that. And you get to sort of see him from his beginnings to where he is now, and just how a beautiful human being is, how he's a beautiful relationship with his wife. And it's a really beautiful story. As for favorite story, runner-up will be William Katz's story.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I'm done. But I think I don't know. Maybe it's just because I know her and I've met her. I think the Heather Langenkamp story of how he called her after her son died and said some really beautiful sort of things and advice and that kind of thing. I think it just shows you what kind of human being he is, and we can learn all the elements of his life that we want, but it's kind of good to know that he's a person first, and that he hasn't lost his humanity or his passion for others. And so I think that's just a beautiful story. And I'm glad that Heather Langenkamp, because I'm sure it's kind of hard for her to talk about that story.
Oh, sure.
Regardless. And for her to bring that up, I think just shows you how much that she cares for him and how much she's just a wonderful human being for reaching out to her at that time.
Yeah. I agree. And I have to give this a 5 too. If I watch a documentary, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes long and I want more. That's a big positive for me, and I'm not going to count it down just because I wanted more. As far as a story, I think, God, there were so many of them, but I not something that ever crossed my mind. But when he talked about hanging out with these other guys and how he was a surfer, and had kind of a washboard abs there for a while, and I just thought that was interesting. It wasn't something I ever thought about. There was the one movie he did with, and I forget who all was in it. I think it was William Catt and Gary Busey and Jan Michael Vincent, Big Wednesday, where I think he was the narrator of the story.
Yeah, he was the narrator.
So I kind of want to check that one out too, with these kind of a surfing thing. But anyway, he just seems like a sweet guy. It was just so many people telling such good stories. And like I said, the way his wife talked about him and smiled when she was talking about him was impressive. Anyway, well, I think we like this. And so, hey,
Mhm.
folks, you can check this out starting June 6th on Screambox. And or you could purchase your own Blu-ray around the end of July.
I wonder if there's
Oh,
deleted
cool.
scenes on the Blu-ray. I'd be interested to
If
see
there
if there's
is,
stuff that
yeah,
was
or
cut.
more stories, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It would be nice.
I bet there's stories that were left on the cutting room floor.
Well, it's done really well because, and I know a lot of documentaries are like this, but the interviewers are not in the movie. You
Right.
know, he's basically telling stories, which I think are answers to questions or
Yeah.
props or something but the interviewer doesn't insert himself into the story, which is nice. So
I think that
All
the
right.
story involving Halloween was probably kind of blew my mind. And
Well,
Go collect those
I mean,
leaves, mister.
to me it goes to that whole idea of community
Mhm.
where this
Yeah.
movie industry community where all these people were just willing to help out, you know. And it was all this was around like 77, 78, you know,
Yeah.
that, some of those stories were about. So, okay, check out Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares. the
Yeah,
Robert
check it
Englund
out.
Story. Yeah, no, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. So,
Yes.
I guess with that, thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Crystal. And say goodnight.
Good night.
Night.